kind of reporting and writing, and I really just quickly wanted to thank the folks at Rabble who've been so helpful to me out in Vancouver. They're not here. We have Megan and Michael, and then Toronto. There's Megan, who's the people with Megans and Megans in Rabble. Megan's the editor of Rabble in New York. There's Caitlin, who also does some editing. Here, Kim Elliott, the publisher of Rabble, is with us tonight, and they all take good care of me. But I really wanted to especially thank two people tonight. First, my wife, Marty Plain, who's sitting here, who edits a great number of the pieces that I do, and finds lots and lots and lots of horrible, awful errors, especially total misuse of, constant misuse of commas. She says, you have a tendency just to put condoms or commas, not commas. Yeah, both. In any case, commas in irrelevant random places. Like there's a reason for a comma. It's not just, gee, I think this piece needs a few commas. And especially Michelle Gregas, who's here with us tonight. Say hello to her, who was the mastermind behind this collection of articles and who did most of the work to make it possible. So thank you very much, Michelle, and again to all of you. Now I have to say, feeling extremely discouraged and disconsolate these days since the introduction of what we call Bill C-51, the anti-terrorism bill. Not because it's another terrible bill or another flawed bill being rammed through Parliament without any proper process, as we say in French, préalable, in advance, and without a fair and democratic hearing in Parliament. That's bad enough. But what really bothers me is the extent to which, even in my experience, it is resonating. I don't believe some Angus Reid poll based on an online pre-selected sample and asking God knows what question and then finding that the people say, well, yes, I think I heard that there was such a bill and I think I might be in favor of it. I don't really think that's useful, but I do believe what I hear from people when I talk to people. And when I talk to people, that's the resonance I'm getting. The resonance I'm getting is, I am scared. I am scared. There is badness out there. There are people who chop people's heads off out there, and they have said there have always been people who chop people's heads off or do worse. There has always been people, there's always been strife and Sturm and Drang and some terrible things going on in the world, but now they're mentioning us. They're saying Canada. They discovered us. We're on their list. The fact that Al-Shabaab in Somalia is a completely different organization from either Al-Qaeda or from the Islamic State folks in Syria and Iraq is really of little interest. Even to people, I was talking to a PhD the other night, a brilliant, progressive, intelligent professor at McGill. He wasn't sure what was the other, but all he knew was, don't want to know about it. Don't want that to happen. Please stop that from happening. I don't want people threatening the West Edmonton Mall, even if I never wouldn't be caught dead in the West Edmonton Mall. I don't want to know about that. And Al-Shabaab, people who know say, well, that's a rather different sort of organization. It's based in Somalia. It's more of a nationalist organization. It has social roots. There's explanations for all this sort of stuff. But Canadians are very, very frightened. Very shaken, very sense this horrible insecurity. Of course, if you listen to cross-country checkup as I did a bit on the weekend, all those people, CBC listeners calling in are saying, well, global warming is a greater threat to the security of mankind than terrorism. That's fine. Unfortunately, I don't think they represent the majority view right now in Canada. I think those of us who say, indeed, we're much more likely to drown in the bathtub. I think somebody actually, I saw in Atlantic Monthly, somebody actually did an analysis, and they did the percentage chances of drowning in the bathtub versus being killed by terrorists. Much, much higher drowning in the bathtub. And, that's why I never take a bath. In fact, I'm always in a shower. The people, nonetheless, there was something about this, and anytime you think maybe things are calming down, maybe we're ready to have a sane and rational debate, maybe we're ready to look at the evidence and look at what's being presented, then there's a tunnel. There's a tunnel. What kind of, when I'm feeling good about some media reporting, I have to say, one has to feel good when when one finds oneself agreeing with the Globe and Mail both on the Fair Elections Act and on C-51, and yet the lurid reporting, there's a tunnel, let's get a terrorism expert. Hold on a second. So now how is the terrorism expert going to explain that they found a rosary in the place and a poppy? These guys wear poppies? They're into the poppy? Do you see like the Al-Shabaab contingency and Remembrance Day? They have a generator. Oh, it's expensive. Who knows what this is? Maybe it's a club. I don't know. But they'll do whatever is happening in the world. This is the lead. Tunnel in Toronto. It's near a site for Pan Am Games. Pretty scary, huh? There's going to be lots of people there. Well, it's going to be near something anyway. They're going to find the tunnel. It'll be near a school. It'll be near a subway station. It'll be near a place where people live. And so that contributes to it. A Facebook posting somewhere from some shadowy group. They mentioned the West Edmonton Mall. My own feeling is like empty the place and then, put a good bomb to it. But that's probably going to be illegal very soon, actually. Saying that's going to be illegal. I know the Edmonton Oilers used to practice there, but look where it got them, So, in any case, having said all that, I was going to talk about, so that's really the modus operandi. A responsible government would say, the world, they might say, yes, the threats in the world have evolved and changed. We have made a military commitment. Even if one can accept that a responsible government may differ from people like me and say it is worthwhile to make some kind of token contribution to a military commitment to try to help the Americans put back together what they broke in the first place and never tried to repair. And after all, poor Mr. Obama, he inherited that too. But he's the president of the United States, so even if it was his predecessor who caused the problem, he's sort of got to work on it. Even if you say that might be acceptable, then your next step is, okay, well, we're now facing perhaps a greater jeopardy or peril here. What we have to do is move in a rational, evidence-based, responsible way and see what is necessary to do. We have to maybe have hearings where we bring forward the various experts and the professionals in security and all that sort of thing. Look at what tools we actually have now. Find out somewhere, if anywhere, where there are défaillances, as we say, where there are gaps, where we do have to legislate if necessary, and then move reasonably with full respect for human rights, not conflating civil disobedience and dissent with terrorism. But this is not a responsible government. This is not a government that chooses to act responsibly. I was going back to what I had been writing since 2011. The very first article was about what they called then Bill C-4, which was so-called anti-smuggling legislation. It ultimately got wrapped up into another piece of legislation called Bill C-31, which dealt with the reform of the whole refugee intake system. And then the government was playing on fear and resentment. We'd had a couple of boatloads of quite legitimate, in fact, for the most part, Tamil refugees from Sri Lanka who'd arrived in Canada. Indeed, perhaps it was through the mechanism, through the wiles of exploitive, what we call people smugglers, and people who were the people who brought them here weren't the nicest people, but they got here somehow, and we were demonizing a whole lot of them and creating legislation which would say if you're a refugee who arrives by boat, you're still a refugee. We're not going to put you in jail for a year. And then when you look at, reporting on what Stephen Woodworth, who loves to stand up, and he's one of the big hitters for the government in all debates, he stood up and he kept talking about queue jumpers and right away bogus refugees, queue jumpers, and people who are seeking to abuse of our goodwill and our patience. Interesting, because this is like the Sri Lanka, the country that produces refugees. Our own prime minister subsequently wouldn't even go to that country, and he wouldn't set foot in the country because they're supposed to be human rights abusers. So he seeks the grandstand opportunity where he can say, all for human rights, we'll go to Sri Lanka. But I don't want to take the refugees in either. But it is, I think I wrote at the time, this is a government that governs on the basis of fear and fear alone, paraphrase Franklin Roosevelt. And that was the first day. That was the beginning of this parliament. And that was the theme in the parliament, to create an impression, to create a scapegoat, to create invent a bumper sticker, a slogan. Just today, Pierre Poilievre got up, asked the question about the Fair Elections Act and about the court case and about the possibility of an injunction. And what does he do? He doesn't answer the issues. He doesn't deal with the issues. He says, well, we had a debate on that, and 87% of Canadians think that people should produce identity if they want to vote. And he doesn't talk about the actual onerous identity. Even many people who object to the Fair Elections Act say, well, we're not talking about any identity provision. We're talking about the particular onerous, unfair, impossible identity provisions in the actual Fair Elections Act when you're called upon to bring your lease or something, or your phone bill, together with your health card. I mean, we're putting huge barriers, and the elimination of vouching for people who have no other option. But they don't address issues. They don't even talk about issues, and that is the nature of the government we've had. But I suppose the sad reality, and I think I'm getting a look here that I should stop talking. I think I will. Even if I'm not getting a look, I think I will stop talking. We can talk. I had all kinds of other things I wanted to say, but you can go read the book or look up the articles on Rabble. But the sad reality is that it's somehow we've come, after 4 years of this and after longer, since 2006, to a point where an appeal to fear does seem to be working. So I don't want to leave it on a negative or depressing note, but it works so well that even the guy leading the opinion polls and the person who so many people say to me, well, I'm not so sure about it, but I have to vote for it because it's the only way to unseat the Conservatives, because after all, opinion polls tell me that. But even he says, well, I'm allowed to criticize this government, but I must slavishly sniff their farts and vote with them. I mean, I can't. I don't have a right not to, because after all, people are too afraid, and I'm in the political prostitution business. I want to get a trick, a trick called something called the government getting myself elected. So I say, legalize real prostitution for real prostitutes, and give them some real protection, a legal opportunity. But in politics, I'm not so sure we need more prostitutes. Anyway, that's it.